What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell. In this episode, we're going to discuss some recent comments by a pretty big-time Ravens player who might just be coming back for one more go at it. But before we get into it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and we will keep you up to date on all your Ravens news. But Jimbo, let the people know what the big news is today.
Here we go. I'm going to give it my best. So,
Calais Campbell has decided to come back one more year.
That's best Calais Campbell impersonation. So Calais Campbell, if you couldn't understand my absolute gibberish, has decided to come back one more year, inspired by the Super Bowl. But there's one caveat to this whole thing, Glenn.
Yes.
He is a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Unrestricted, full reign to go wherever he wants. So really the question comes down to this. Should the Ravens want him back?
Mm-hmm.
Should he want to come back? What's it going to cost? Right? So it's going to be a 1-year deal. He says come back for one more year.
Yep.
So first questions first. Should the Ravens want Calais Campbell back, Glenn?
Oh, 100% they should want him back.
Okay, I'm glad you answered that way, because if not, I was going to have to fight you through the screen.
Yes, rightfully so.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
so I agree with you 100%, but why?
Yeah, I mean, the guy is still an impact football player. This guy is not what he used to be, which was a monster. Like he's not the pass rush, get you double-digit sacks plus be the best run defender in the league, which is what he was at his height.
Right.
He's not that anymore, but he's still a stud. He's still probably our best run defender, on the team. As far as if you just look at the grades through PFF, he was our second highest rated player on the team behind only Mark Andrews, who was by far the best at his position and one of the very best in the league, no matter the position. So he's still a stud. This isn't a guy like where he's crawling down the backstretch of his career and a shell of his former self. The guy still makes huge plays, certainly in the run game, and still at this point in his career provides more in a pass rush than most guys that are considered run-stuffing interior linemen. Now, so the guy is still an extreme value, and that's what he does on the field. Now, off the field, talking about man of the year, a guy who can teach every young guy what it means to be a pro and how to take care of your body, how to make sure that you're doing things right for the team, but also for yourself. I mean, the guy is just invaluable for what he brings off the field, on top of being a stud still on the field. So no doubt that the Ravens would love to have him back. In fact, I can't imagine a team out there that couldn't find a place for Calais Campbell on their roster.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. The only teams, I guess, well, you're right. Any team would want Calais Campbell, but it really comes down to the teams that he would want to go to, right? Because if it's 1 year, he wants to be a contender, obviously wants a chance at that coveted ring. So who knows? Maybe he'll end up in LA. A lot of old guys seem to end up with the Rams. But that's what I want to talk about. I agree with you 100% for all the reasons you mentioned. The Ravens should want Calais Campbell back. Should Calais Campbell want to come back to Baltimore? I want to talk about that because obviously, as a Ravens fan, I would say if I'm Calais Campbell, yes. But I can also say that, based on the roster we have, the front office we have, the familiarity he has with the team, with his teammates. But I can also understand his hesitation in that, like, the AFC has it's a tough division, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the AFC has a ton of good quarterbacks. And so, with that being said, a guy gets hot, and look, Joe Flacco's got a Super Bowl ring, right? And there's a lot of them out there. And there's a lot of other good teams that are going to be vying for his services.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Calais Campbell should want to come back to the Ravens. And rightfully so. I don't think it'll be a situation where it's like, I felt like with Steve, well, I guess he was still under contract, but I felt like with a lot of other guys, it was either they were going to be here or they were going to retire.
Yeah.
But might be a trend. Eric Weddle said it was either here or retirement. Then he went and played for the Rams. So maybe Calais Campbell decides to do the same thing. Maybe he goes home to Denver, right? He's from Denver. Maybe he goes play for the Broncos because he wants to finish out at home. A lot of things. But where do you see the Ravens lining up as far as teams he should want to play for? Like, are they at the top of the list, top 5? Like, how do you see that breaking down?
Yeah, so I mean, there's no doubt he's going to want to come back and play for a contender. And oh, by the way, and Jimbo, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, so I don't know if you want to, while I run my mouth, maybe do an unplug of the mic or so. I don't know. It just sounded super weird. But he definitely wants to come back and play for a contender. So the good news is the Ravens are very much so going to be in the mix of things because next year they're going to get a ton of guys back, including the most important guy, of course, and Lamar Jackson. Of course, when he was in there, even with the bevy of injuries around him, the Ravens were the number 1 seed in the AFC. And really, if you take any quarterback out of the starting role midseason, watch that team and they will certainly nosedive into irrelevancy like we saw from the Ravens. So I think that he can confidently say if the Ravens had Lamar Jackson that they would have been in position to compete for the Super Bowl. And I mean, just look at the fact that they lost by 1 point to the eventual Super Bowl champions. And they did so with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. And they had every opportunity to win that game, even with their backup under center. So I think that he certainly would look at the Ravens as a team that can compete for a championship. I mean, who would have thought that the Bengals preseason would have made it to the Super Bowl? So anyone can compete, but certainly the Ravens will be one of those teams that can compete. Now, the question is, what impacts him more? Is it money? Because there's going to be a team out there that I guarantee will offer more money than the Ravens will offer. So I think another thing the Ravens have in their favor is the fact that every veteran that has gone or has come from another team, another organization, or bounced around from multiple organizations and then come here has complimented the Ravens organization, has really praised them and how it has a family-like atmosphere. That it's just different here in Baltimore, and I'm sure he saw that because he's been to multiple franchises around the league, and he's one of the most respected guys. So I think the fact that he'll be treated the best also matters. I mean, when you're coming out of he's already had a Hall of Fame career. The only thing missing is that ring, right? So when you're debating, you want a team that compete, but you also want a team that's going to treat you with the respect that you've earned and that you deserve from your long, successful career. So I think that's the two things that are going for him in the big way. But do you look at any reason why the Ravens wouldn't be his first choice or who might be ahead of them? Like,
can you hear me okay here?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think of a team that I would hate to see him go to, but like Kansas City, I'm sure they'd love to have him, right? Have a big guy like him up front. Now I know they have their own cap issues.
And they got Chris Jones.
Right. But certainly they seem to find a way around those cap issues every single year. I think about another team that now this is kind of a dark horse, but certainly went on a hot streak and people were really starting to buy into them. That's the New England Patriots. Now, I don't know if I'd want to end my career playing for Bill Belichick. It's probably not the funnest thing.
No fun zone.
Right. However, look, people are believers in that team and what they're doing, right? So you talk about them as well. Green Bay, that could be another interesting one. I know they got some guys up front, but the point is, one, you don't know what's going to happen this offseason. Two, at the end of the day, he's just looking to play for a contender. Once the LA Rams, the LA Chargers. I mean, I think there's a lot of teams, but I agree with you. Familiarity, and having one of the most explosive quarterbacks in the NFL is crucial, right? Like, there's not too many more than Lamar Jackson. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to Calais Campbell, see what he decides. It also, a lot of it will depend on where these quarterbacks end up. If Deshaun Watson ends up in a Buccaneers jersey, does that change? Does he go down to now? Once again, I'm
replace Ndamukong Suh, and
right. So where does Aaron Rodgers go? Where does Russell Wilson end up? All these things are going to greatly impact a guy like Calais Campbell.
Yeah. So I mean, if Aaron Rodgers ends up in a Cleveland Browns uniform, Calais Campbell could go, man, you put me in the middle with Myles Garrett on one side, Jadeveon on the other.
Yeah.
Oof. forget about it. So
We
yeah, I
could
mean
be looking at the Bengals, who are going to have serious cap space, which is the crazy part. They're going to have what, like 48 million in cap space or something like that.
I didn't even think about them, and they already have some pretty stud pass
Yeah,
rushers.
add them to those guys up front that they got on the edge. It could
Ugh.
get interesting. So it's going to be really interesting to see what
But
happens.
my
with Calais
question
Campbell.
is, what do you think it costs this
This year
year?
he made what, 15?
Yeah, the cap hit was 13. Yeah, he had a cap hit of $13 million this year. Now I'm assuming it'll be one of those. Even if it is a 1-year deal, they'll mask it in a 2 to 3 year deal.
Yeah, like they did with Alejandro Villanueva.
To spread out that signing bonus and reduce his cap number. But either way, it's not going to be pennies.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think he's gonna want what he made this year. I don't think he's gonna go for something ridiculously low, right? Like you're not sniffing anything under 10.
Yeah.
And so I think he's gonna want what he want. Par for the course. He's gonna want what he made last year. I think is what it is at the end of the day. What about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And man, that the Ravens are not, they're definitely not normally a team that has a bunch of cap space, sitting on the side. And this year, Lamar's making more than he has ever at $23 million cap hit. And then, so the money is adding up. And if they can't find a way to lower that cap number through an extension with Lamar, they might just not have the money to get Calais Campbell if they want to, because look, they still have to figure out what they're doing with center. If Bradley Bozeman's not the guy, is Ryan Jensen the guy? Like, is there a guy in free agency you want to bring in? And if you bring in Calais, does that mean you can't address that? There's just so many tough decisions, but ultimately I think the Ravens would welcome him back at a price that's, like you said, double digits, not breaking the bank, but decent.
And what do you think ends up happening? Do you think he stays with the Ravens? Do you think he goes somewhere else?
I think he stays here in Baltimore.
Ooh.
I think he's loved his time here. And I think that, he fits what the Ravens want to do up front. And so I think he looks at, man, we were this close until we lost our quarterback. And so let's see what happens if we can get this guy back out there healthy. We beat the Chiefs. We took it to them. We certainly have a hump to get over when it comes to the Bengals, but let's see what the Bengals look like. Would they go 10-7 and they had the last place schedule? Let's see what the Bengals look like with a first place schedule, and not playing teams like the Jets. And which, by the way, who gets the last place schedule this year, Jimbo?
The Baltimore Ravens. That's right.
So
I want to tell you this, Glenn. I got to be the bearer of bad news, but I feel very confident that he's going to go somewhere else.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think he's going to go somewhere else. And I just don't see it being here because of the fiscal responsibility of one EDC. I don't think they're willing to give him. I think that a equally likely team, objectively speaking, as far as contending for a Super Bowl that exists out there, will offer him the same money. Or excuse me,
but it's
the
still
same
the
money
unknown.
he made.
Like
the same money he made this year. I don't think the Ravens are going to offer him the same money he made this year. I don't think they can. I don't think they're in a position to, like you said, there's too many holes to fill. There's too many rookies that we're going to have to sign, too many deals pending. Like there's so many moving parts to where I think the Ravens are just going to realize that it's a luxury they can't afford. And they're going to have to make up for it in the draft and through young guys and figure out what they're going to do. But I think that Calais is a guy that doesn't get enough money to stay in comparison to what other contenders can also offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now you also have to realize there's usually not a ton of cap space for content. Now the Bengals
there's not.
are, the kind of the exception to that, but
but the Ravens seem to have a way of putting a lot of emphasis on the cap where some other teams just seem to make it
find a way.
Yeah. So, and of course we'll get into that.
But the grass is not always greener, Calais, and I know he knows that because he spent a lot of time in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And
even though they did make it to an AFC Championship game.
They did, but they're a far cry from that now.
Yeah.
And I know one thing, he had a good time while he was here in Baltimore.
Yep.
So let's hope that was good enough to bring him back. Or let us know what you think. Like maybe you think, it's time for Calais to move on. He had a great career, but at this point with the injury, he has had some injury issues as of late.
Some nagging stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting old. Every day he's getting older. So, maybe you don't want to bring him back. Maybe you don't. Maybe you feel like his best football is certainly behind him and that he's not worth that type of financial investment. Or you're on the other end. You say, please, one more year, Calais, one more year. Let's see what we can do. Let's go all in, like we say oftentimes on this show, to hopefully send him out the best way possible, which was with a Lombardi trophy. But let us know all in the comments below, and we will talk soon.